First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Mara Oprea from the Novelty Project, who also have an intervention for us. I think my colleague Anna is going to share the screen. So, Mara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Enrique, for welcoming me and for the brief introduction. Maybe I can give you some information about me quickly. My name is Mara Oprea. I am here on behalf of the Institute for European Energy and Climate Policy. And basically, I am the coordinator of the RENOVERTY project, which I will talk about in more detail. But as Anika mentioned, or I guess asked, we are a research institution, a nonprofit, and we perform a lot of research to alleviate energy poverty and increase energy efficiency all throughout Europe. So next slide, please. Thank you. Today, I'd like to talk about how home renovation and implementation of energy efficient solutions can reduce the exposure of rural households to energy poverty. As I'm sure many of you already know, energy poverty is defined as a situation in which households are unable to access essential energy services and products. Next, please. Despite the wide recognition of energy poverty as a general concept at the local, regional, national, and European levels, it receives limited attention when it comes to European rural areas, although energy poverty is more prevalent in these regions than in urban contexts. In fact, rural areas and rural residents are at a significantly higher risk of facing poverty and social exclusion, and the issue is particularly pronounced in the case of Central and Eastern, Southeastern, and Southern European countries. You can see on screen actually that the correlation between rural areas and the risk of poverty and social exclusion is made evident by the fact that many predominantly rural areas also have a medium to high vulnerability index. Although this demonstrates that there is a direct need for support to alleviate energy poverty in rural areas, practices to reduce energy injustices are actually quite slim. Next slide, please. Thank you. For this reason, one of RENOVERTY's main objectives has been to establish a knowledge base about rural energy poverty in order to understand the needs of rural and peri-urban households when it comes to energy. We also want and have co-designed solutions to tackle the issues brought up by these households. And then we've created what we call rural energy efficiency roadmaps, or REERs, as you'll hear me say in the presentation. These REERs are meant to be used by rural households as a resource and guideline to help them overcome financial, technical, and administrative barriers to renovation that are specific to their region in hopes that they'll be able to feel comfortable in their own homes without breaking the bank to do so. Next slide, please. Thank you. Before we began developing our REERs, the consortium actually conducted research and was able to identify a number of barriers that hinder the implementation of energy efficiency policies in rural areas. The most prominent of these are financial, geographic, awareness and access, and regulatory barriers. In rural contexts, the lack of capital due to lower incomes combined with high upfront costs of energy efficiency tend to discourage the uptake of renovations. Additionally, credit access and debt aversion result in many rural residents being unable or unwilling to take on debt to finance energy efficiency. Rural areas are also characterized by geographic isolation, which results in a shortage of local energy efficiency workers, access to financing and incentives, as well as a lack of economies of scale. Since rural populations are exposed to fewer educational opportunities, households also lack technical knowledge about energy efficiency, which leads to limited awareness of its benefits or skepticism of existing resources. The lack of time to actually research energy efficiency measures or the dedication of time to other priorities decreases the likelihood of rural households undergoing renovation, which is then only worsened by the lack of access to traditional marketing channels promoting energy efficiency interventions. Finally, regulation barriers often exist due to the absence of recognition of rural energy poverty by policymakers, who still do tend to give higher priority to urban contexts. So all of this knowledge helped to guide the development of the renovation roadmaps and the development of targeted measures to reduce exposure to energy poverty by rural citizens. Next slide, please. I'm sure many of you are already aware of a lot of the information I've just shared as you're experts in your fields. So perhaps I can now present something that is more new to you, that being what exactly can be found in the RENOVERTY REIRs that could be used to create more comfortable and affordable housing for rural citizens. So a renovation roadmap is a combination of a technical and non-technical document, the former targeting rural households and the latter targeting important stakeholders in the renovation process, including policymakers, energy agencies, energy experts, LAGs, and so on. The technical document provides building owners and occupants with detailed instructions as well as extensive and tailored renovation recommendations to increase the energy efficiency of their properties. These recommendations are based on on-site visits where we gather data on local energy performance via audits, conversations with building owners and occupants, desk research surveys, and discussions with local, regional, and national experts. The technical part of the REIR therefore aims to reduce financial, legal, community, and technical barriers to renovations for households based on a region's regulations, climate, culture, and architecture of the actual households. More specifically, it acts as a guideline on setting expectations for renovations, planning the works, choosing the most effective energy saving solutions applicable to households in the area, and overcoming common challenges when renovating, such as budget restrictions, delays in the processes, etc. The non-technical or conceptual document then addresses various energy stakeholders and offers them high-level support on implementing changes to regulations and financial support programs for rural energy poverty alleviation. Next slide, please.
Yeah, can we speed up a little bit, Mara, please?
Oh, yes, sorry. For the time being, can you hear me already? Is it better? Yes, okay. For the time being, our REIRs have been tailored to the regions you now see on screen. However, we will be launching a call for replication of our roadmaps in the coming weeks, as we hope to continue rural revitalization through home renovations across new regions. Next slide, please. Thank you. Hopefully you've heard what I've said so far, but if not, we will be releasing the REIRs by the end of this month. They will actually be published in English and the languages spoken in the pilots. So you will be able to review these and download the renovation roadmaps via the links on screen if you're interested. I really do hope that these documents will prove useful to those of you who are in attendance today. Next slide, please. And so I want to thank you, Enrique, for letting me kind of set the stage for today's discussion on home renovation and rural revitalization. And if anyone has questions about the contents of my presentation, the REIRs, or the actual solutions that are offered within the roadmaps, I'd be more than happy to discuss this in the coming 45 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mara, for the comprehensive presentation. Sorry for pushing you to keep it short, but we really want to, we have had a lot of presentations today. We want to keep time for discussion, but I think it has been very interesting, your solutions for the roadmap. I would like to welcome Petra, who would also introduce what they're doing on this topic.
Thank you.
Petra, you can hear me? Yes.
Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. I would like to thank you for giving me a chance to speak about our initiative. So Non Tox Uni Kum is the initiative that is trying to address the gap that we saw while we were researching that comes when you speak with architects, you speak with end customers, you speak with people doing the renovations and so on. And we found a gap, and we are addressing it with our initiative of a knowledge transfer that happens between sustainable practices and implementing them into real projects. So as a very, very fully embracing Bauhaus movement, and also fully addressing maybe a bit not so much spoken about healthy materials problems that are also happening. You can go to next slide, Enrique, thank you. So we try to address all this together, and we we found a way to communicate with a lot of stakeholders within the project and trying to explain the practices that are already implemented, like Matthew before said, for example, they do not come to end customers. So why don't we learn from projects that we see, and we try to address those kind of problems. Why are we doing this? Because we think it's very important to address abandoned and degraded buildings and rebuild instead of build. And there are many ways to do it, and it might we might as well do it good while we are doing it. So if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we established our Lighthouse Hub that will, it's a project that it's kind of an initiative that brings together stakeholders, municipalities, municipality authorities with participatory approach and so on. So we established a hub. We are organizing Non Tox Days, which we try to, I would say, transfer the best practices to other stakeholders and connect them. We are also doing a lot to, I would say, educate about non-toxicity and healthier materials, because we can use them. And one of those approaches that we use is our Lighthouse Hub. You can go to the next slide, please. Our hub that will serve as a knowledge and resource center for non-toxic materials and sustainable construction, because sustainable doesn't always necessarily mean also healthy, and we try to combine all those things. So I believe that combining Bauhaus 3 pillars and participatory approach and so on, transdisciplinary combinations, and combining, I don't know, vernacular architecture within this project, it's very, very important. So I, as an architect, feel and see that there's a big problem with, I come from industrial region that Mara before mentioned, Zasawie, and that's a region with very much abandoned places, and we are industrial region with very under addressed rural areas also. So with dispersed settlements, it's very hard to get big projects. So we believe that implementing this into small lighthouses and trying to create best practices is a way to do it. You can go to the next slide, please. So the region that we are addressing to is very prone to Bauhaus movement, very prone to sustainable building construction areas, because the region of Zasawie used to be a black region of Slovenia. So we had a lot of industry, very little rural, mostly self-sufficient farms and so on. So what's happening now is that those buildings, also rural buildings, are getting abandoned. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And creating healthier living conditions within those rural, and giving them another, I would say, giving them another purpose. So we all know that there are not going to be big farms there. So what do we do with that rural areas? So if we are not farming, then we need to get them content, additional content. And within that in mind, we are building ourselves a hub within the farm, abandoned farm, 150-year-old abandoned farm, And we are trying to prove that it's viable and affordable to build with this in aspect. So it's viable and affordable to build with sustainable, beautiful, inclusive, and also healthier. So we can combine that within the resources that we have. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Petra, can we speed up?
Yes. Yes, so you can go to next slide. The non-toxic days are one of the things that we organize, and through different kinds of projects, we try to do the lighthouses, try to be adaptable across all sectors, and we try to spread this philosophy to many projects. So it can be public project, private project, tourist project, industrial project. Everything can be well thought. And maybe one step, you can go to next slide, please. And maybe one step back, connecting all the dots here from the black to white again. You can go to next slide. Okay, no slide. Okay, yeah, so my conclusion would be maybe sometimes 2 steps back are, or I would say 2 steps back here means one really big step forward to the future, because we all knew these sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful things were in vernacular architecture. They used to be there, and bringing them back to life, I think it's a huge step towards the better future that we should believe that should be also non-toxic. Thank you very much.